So if we do have contact, physical contact with aliens, I think it will be benign.
My frivolous mind is much taken.
Very intelligent beings reasonably near. Why have they not visited us?
Well, that's a very good question. Let's throw it right across to Arthur Clarke.
There are literally dozens of answers to this. They may have come in the remote past. They may be visiting us every 10,000 years. I mean, the universe is a huge place, and even if there are fleets of survey ships going all over the cosmos, we shouldn't expect visitors less than, I'd say, every 1,000 years or so. They may know all about us, and they may have put a quarantine around our planet for pretty good reasons. They may be totally uninterested in us. They may be so much higher that they, we're just beneath contempt, if you like. You can speculate endlessly. I think we should just wait and try and get more evidence.
Maybe their space probes are saying there's no intelligent life on Earth.
They may have received our television programs and decided that that is the case.
May I attempt a different answer to Stephen's question?
Please do, Carl.
The first large-scale commercial broadcasting on the Earth was in the late 1940s. So that's, 40 years ago. So you must imagine a spherical wave expanding out from the Earth at the velocity of light, which contains all the dreary programs of the late 1940s. Since then, that expanding spherical wave containing the news of a developing civilization on Earth has traveled some 40 light years. Suppose that there are no civilizations closer than 40 light years. Perhaps they're not here because they don't know we are about just yet. But in time, the message gets to them, and perhaps they send a little expedition to look us over.
I was delighted when I read that when space probes went out, first of all, you put the figure of a man and a woman on the outside so that any alien life would recognize what we looked like. And then in a latest probe, I think you put in an LP of Earth sounds with instructions in hand signals on how to work the LP. How do you think anybody would have reacted if, in fact, alien intelligence had heard this LP?
My guess is that it'd be something like, oh, look, another artifact from some extremely primitive civilization. Which one is this? But then some degree of thanks that we were thoughtful enough to send a message into the far future, which could in no way benefit us, certainly a selfless act, and perhaps it would be recognized as a hopeful and optimistic gesture by an emerging civilization just setting foot into the great galactic wilderness.
Yes, Arthur.
I know what is going to happen to your voyagers, Carl. They'll be overtaken one day by a terrestrial spaceship and brought back to the Smithsonian.
It's certainly technologically possible, but I hope they let it go on its original mission.
Now, it's very nearly 20 years ago since man landed on the moon. Do you think that we've basically stopped trying to get man any further? Is there any chance that another Neil Armstrong will set foot on Mars in our lifetime?
The United States and the Soviet Union have managed to booby-trap the planet with about 60,000 nuclear weapons, with a little help from Britain, France, China, and Israel. A tiny fraction of those weapons is enough to destroy the participating nations, certainly, the global civilization possibly, and the human species just maybe. It is now time for the United States and the Soviet Union to demonstrate that they can undo this specter, that they can demonstrate their ability to work together on high technology for peaceful, hopeful purposes that carry us into a benign 21st century. And that is why I support the idea of joint U.S.-Soviet cooperation in the exploration of Mars, leading up to an international manned, and by the way, womaned, mission to the planet. Americans and Soviets, as representatives of the human species, other nations, I presume, would also be involved, and then a glorious, whatever it would be, few-month period in which Mars, I have a globe of it right next to me, in which Mars would be explored. There are hundreds, for example, hundreds of ancient river valleys on Mars. Mars is today bone dry. It was once much warmer, much wetter, much denser atmosphere, much more Earth-like. What were those conditions like? Why did an Earth-like planet get converted into this deep ice age condition that Mars has today? And is there life there? Could there once have been life? Are there fossil forms? There are extraordinary, enigmatic geological features on the planet. What is their nature? There is a huge amount of exploration to do, and all of it, every step that I've described, could be before the television cameras of the world, and we could all participate in such exploration.
Is it not a danger that the human bits that we take with us will pollute and destroy something enormously precious out there simply because we're so inquisitive about it? Arthur.
Well, as to the question, should human beings go to the other planets, I think the answer to that is, well, we could have stayed in Europe and explored America by robots. It might have been, it certainly saved a lot of human lives, but of course we didn't. We went there and lived in this new continent. Now, admittedly, Mars, in fact, none of the planets in the solar system is anything like as benign as the United States or the other parts of this planet. But one day, people are going to call them home. There will be Martians one day, and they'll be our great-grandchildren. And they'll think Earth probably is a horrible place in which to live. Now, as to whether we will pollute these environments, yes, to some extent. Of course, colonization always involves the destruction of what was there first. And I'm quite sure in the next century, in fact, already it started. There's a conference on the pollution of space planned in the United States in the very near future. This is already a serious problem in near-Earth space. But we have to control it. I mean, you have to cut down forests on this Earth to make new cities, and on the Moon, I'm afraid one day we may have to abolish much of the lunar vacuum, and on Mars we may have to change the atmosphere. But I do hope we will leave bits of the universe in a pristine condition.
But are we also going to have to change ourselves on Mars? I mean, are we going to have to evolve differently?
Mars will change us. In fact, this is part of the evolutionary progress. By going out into new environments, by occupying new biological niches, that is the way we progress and discover the universe and explore and perhaps fulfill our destiny.
Do you think that other planets might have the same kind of system in which there would be a morality, in which there would be people taking moral attitudes, which may not necessarily be the same as ours, of course?
Well, all societies must have some moral structure. I mean, otherwise you just can't have a society. I mean, there must be understand rules, the way you behave to our neighbors. And even if the societies consist of machines, they must have a machine language so they can agree to react together. So morality, in some way, is essential and universal.
Now, Professor Hawking, in the very last paragraph of your book, you say that if we discover a complete theory of the universe, then it should in time be understandable in broad principle to everyone and not just to a few scientists. And when that happens, all of us will be able to start discussing the why rather than the how. And I quote, "If we find the answer to that, it would be the ultimate triumph of human reason, for then we would know the mind of God." Do you think that God can intervene in the universe as he wants, or is God too bound by the laws of science?
The question of whether God is bound by the laws of science is a bit like the question, can God make a stone that is so heavy that he cannot lift it? I don't think it is very useful to speculate on what God might or might not be able to do. Rather, we should examine what he actually does with the universe we live in. All our observations suggest that it operates according to well-defined laws. These laws may have been ordained by God, but it seems that he does not intervene in the universe to break the laws, at least not once he had set the universe going.